The story of King Leopold II of Belgium and his brutal exploitation of the Congo Free State stands as one of history's most horrific examples of colonial greed. In 1865, a 30-year-old prince ascended to the throne of Belgium. Leopold II inherited a small, newly independent nation that had only broken away from the Netherlands in 1830. Belgium was prosperous, industrialized, and stable. But for Leopold, this wasn't enough. He looked at the great European powers, Britain, France, the Netherlands, and envied their vast colonial empires that brought wealth, prestige, and global influence. Leopold was consumed by colonial ambition. He studied maps, read accounts of explorers, and obsessed over acquiring territory. He looked to Asia first, eyeing the Philippines, but found no opportunity. He considered parts of South America, but again, nothing materialized. Then, in the 1870s, his attention turned to the vast, largely unmapped interior of Central Africa, specifically the Congo Basin. The problem was simple. Belgium had no interest in colonialism. The Belgian government and public were content with their prosperous little kingdom. They saw colonies as expensive, risky ventures. So Leopold decided on an audacious plan. He would acquire a colony not for Belgium, but for himself personally. In 1876, Leopold organized the Geographic Conference in Brussels, gathering explorers, geographers, and philanthropists. He presented himself as a humanitarian, declaring his mission was to bring civilization, Christianity, and commerce to Africa, to end the Arab slave trade and uplift the African people. He established the International African Association, positioning himself as a benevolent benefactor. This was pure theater. Privately, Leopold wrote to his advisors about his true intentions. "I do not want to miss a good chance of getting us a slice of this magnificent African cake." Leopold hired the famous explorer Henry Morton Stanley, the man who had found Dr. Livingstone, to explore the Congo and secure treaties with local chiefs. Between 1879 and 1884, Stanley traveled throughout the region, persuading or deceiving hundreds of tribal leaders into signing treaties. Most chiefs had no understanding of what they were signing. They thought they were agreeing to trade relationships or alliances. In reality, they were signing away their land and sovereignty. Stanley established stations along the Congo River, raised Leopold's blue flag with a gold star, and laid the groundwork for what would become the Congo Free State. In 1884-1885, European powers gathered in Berlin to carve up Africa among themselves. This conference, hosted by German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, would determine the fate of an entire continent, yet not a single African representative was present. Leopold arrived with his carefully crafted image as a humanitarian. He convinced the European powers that he would bring civilization to the Congo, maintain free trade, and suppress the slave trade. His representatives argued that unlike the colonial powers, Leopold had no selfish national interest. He was a private individual motivated by philanthropy. It was perhaps history's most successful con. On February 5, 1885, the Congo Free State was officially recognized, with Leopold II as its sole owner. An area 76 times the size of Belgium, nearly 1 million square miles, became the personal property of one man. No other European monarch achieved anything comparable. Leopold now owned a territory with approximately 20-30 million inhabitants, and he would govern it with absolute power, answerable to no one. For the first few years, Leopold's Congo focused on ivory. But in the 1890s, everything changed. The invention of the pneumatic tire and the bicycle craze created massive global demand for rubber. The Congo's rainforests contained vast amounts of wild rubber vines, and Leopold saw an opportunity for unimaginable wealth. But there was a problem. Harvesting wild rubber was labor-intensive, difficult and dangerous work. The vines grew high in the forest canopy. Congolese people had no interest in abandoning their farms and villages to collect rubber for Leopold's profit. Leopold's solution was terror. He transformed the Congo into a vast, forced labor camp. His administration divided the territory into zones, with concession companies given monopolies over specific regions. These companies had one mandate: extract maximum rubber at minimum cost. The system worked like this. Armed soldiers from the Force Publique, Leopold's private army of African conscripts, commanded by European officers, would enter villages and demand rubber quotas. These quotas were impossible to meet. Villagers would have to abandon their fields, their families, their lives, and spend days in the forest collecting rubber. To ensure compliance, the force publique took women and children hostage. Men had to bring in their rubber quota before their families would be released. Those who failed to meet quotas, resisted, or fled were shot, mutilated, or beaten to death. One practice became the horrifying symbol of Leopold's Congo, the severing of hands. The force publique was given limited ammunition, and soldiers were required to account for every bullet by presenting the severed right hand of their victims. This was meant to prove they hadn't wasted ammunition on hunting. The policy created perverse incentives. Soldiers would cut off the hands of living people to account for bullets used for other purposes. They would raid villages and cut off hands to meet their quota. Survivors described baskets full of smoked hands delivered to European officials. Photographs from missionaries showed children and adults with their hands severed. One photograph shows a father staring at the severed hand and foot of his 5-year-old daughter, killed because her village's rubber quota was short. Villages that failed to meet quotas might be burned entirely. Soldiers would kill men, women, and children indiscriminately. Rape was systematic. Starvation became widespread as people couldn't tend their fields while collecting rubber. The exact death toll from Leopold's rule remains debated, but all serious estimates are staggering. When Leopold took control, the Congo's population was estimated at 20-30 million. By 1924, a Belgian government commission estimated the population at only 10 million. Conservative historians suggest 1 to 3 million deaths. Others cite 10 million or more. Some scholars argue the population may have been halved. People died from direct murder and brutality, starvation as they were unable to farm while collecting rubber, disease epidemics that swept through traumatized and weakened populations, plummeting birth rates as communities were destroyed, and sleeping sickness and other diseases that spread partly due to the disruption of traditional life. Adam Hochschild, in his landmark book, King Leopold's Ghost, notes that the Congolese population decline during this period rivals that of the Holocaust or Stalin's purges. Meanwhile, Leopold never set foot in the Congo. He ruled from his palaces in Belgium, enjoying the enormous profits. The rubber wealth allowed him to construct grand buildings, monuments, and estates throughout Belgium. He became one of the world's richest men. The truth about the Congo might have remained hidden, but for the courage of several individuals who refused to stay silent. George Washington Williams, an African-American journalist and historian, visited the Congo in 1890. Shocked by what he witnessed, he wrote an open letter to Leopold, documenting the forced labor, killings, and brutality. It was one of the first exposés, though it received limited attention at the time. Missionaries from various denominations working in the Congo began documenting atrocities. They took photographs of mutilated victims, recorded testimonies, and sent reports back to Europe. These images, particularly those of children with severed hands, would prove crucial in turning public opinion. E.D. Morel, a British shipping clerk, noticed something strange. Ships heading to the Congo carried only guns, chains, and ammunition. Ships returning carried valuable rubber and ivory. Where was the trade? He realized the Congo was producing wealth not through commerce, but through slavery and theft. Morel quit his job and dedicated his life to exposing Leopold. He founded the Congo Reform Association in 1904 and became one of history's first great human rights campaigners. Roger Casement, a British diplomat, conducted an official investigation in 1903. His report, with its careful documentation of atrocities, caused a sensation when published. Casement interviewed survivors, recorded testimonies, and provided the irrefutable evidence that forced the international community to act. Mark Twain even joined the cause, writing a savage satire called King Leopold's Soliloquy, mocking the king's justifications and exposing his greed. By 1904-1908, international pressure had become overwhelming. The Congo reform movement had mobilized public opinion across Britain and the United States. The British government demanded action. The United States Congress passed resolutions condemning Leopold. Leopold fought back with propaganda, hiring lobbyists and journalists to defend him. He claimed the reports were exaggerated, that conditions were improving, that he was a misunderstood benefactor, but the evidence was irrefutable. In 1908, facing international condemnation and threats of intervention, Leopold was forced to cede the Congo to the Belgian government. The Congo Free State became the Belgian Congo. Before handing it over, Leopold ordered the burning of most of the Congo Free State archives. He destroyed the evidence of his crimes, ensuring that the full extent of the atrocities would never be completely known. Entire rooms of documents were reduced to ashes in the furnaces of his Brussels palace. Leopold died in 1909, just 1 year after losing the Congo. He was 74 years old and enormously wealthy. He was never prosecuted, never faced trial, never expressed remorse. In Belgium, he was mourned as a king. Some Belgians booed his funeral procession, but many still saw him as a great monarch who had brought prestige to their nation. Statues of Leopold remained throughout Belgium for over a century. Many are only being removed now. In the 2020s, as Belgium begins to reckon with this history, the transfer to Belgian government control improved conditions somewhat, but exploitation continued for decades. The Congo wouldn't gain independence until 1960, and even then, Belgium and Western powers helped assassinate the Congo's first democratically elected leader, Patrice Lumumba, in 1961, helping install the dictator Mobutu Sese Seko. The story of King Leopold II and the Congo reveals several enduring truths about the capacity for evil when profit meets racism. Leopold could commit these atrocities because he, and most Europeans, didn't see Africans as fully human. The dehumanization made the cruelty possible. The Congo reform movement was one of history's first international human rights campaigns. It proved that exposure, documentation, and organized activism could challenge even a powerful monarch. The Congo today, now the Democratic Republic of Congo, remains one of the world's poorest nations despite enormous natural wealth. Decades of exploitation, the destruction of traditional societies, and the arbitrary borders drawn by colonizers created lasting instability. For generations, this history was barely taught in Belgian schools. Leopold's statue stood undisturbed. The full story was often minimized or ignored. Only in recent decades has Belgium begun seriously confronting this past. King Leopold II's Congo stands as a reminder that atrocities don't require gas chambers or concentration camps. Sometimes they happen in pursuit of profit, enabled by racism, and hidden behind rhetoric of civilization and progress. The story challenges us to remember, to confront uncomfortable history, and to recognize that the capacity for such evil exists wherever people are seen as less than human. The ghosts of 10 million Congolese demand that we never forget